So we never know how something we say, something we do, something we give a patient is going to impact their lives and what the ripples in the pond are going to be and how far they're going to reach.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological. I had a patient the other day. She was angry and she was disappointed that she didn't have SIBO. You heard that right. She was upset because the test that she'd taken for SIBO, it came back negative. Now, I suspect some of you are surprised at hearing this. Others of you are nodding your head in agreement. You've seen it too. You've noticed how difficult it is for so many of our patients to sit with any kind of comfort in the midst of not knowing when something with their health is amiss and no one can come up with a clear answer as to why they feel the way they do. My patient was hoping that a SIBO diagnosis would answer the questions of why her digestion works the way it does, and why she has a kind of fogginess in her thought, and why in general she just feels crappy the way she does. I've had patients with bothersome problems that defy conventional medical explanation. It drives them crazy. I've had people say to me, "I don't care if it's cancer. I just want to know what the heck it is." Astonishing, isn't it? That someone would rather have the known diagnosis of cancer than the unknown problem that refuses to be tracked on a scan, blood test, or hormone panel. The unknown can be just that unsettling. I suspect this points to something most of us experience to one degree or another. We want to feel like we make sense to ourselves, that anything amiss should have an explanation, that life should have more certainty than uncertainty. I suspect that many of us get edgy when reminded that life is full of uncertainty, that we actually have very little control over what happens to us, that at the edges of our awareness, at the edges in the map of our worlds, there are indeed dragons. I find that on almost a daily basis. People come in with some story of how something has gone wrong. But to me, it actually sounds like good news, not bad news. I in no way want to make light of the challenges that my patients have. But I often find myself saying to them, "How's that bad news? It sounds like good news." Sometimes patients get angry with me for saying this, but usually they're a little dumbstruck. I'm not trying to talk them into my perspective. It's just that at times it's obvious that they're telling themselves a very limited story and leaving out potential resources and possibilities. Sometimes people confuse what's right about them with what's wrong about them. People often ask me how acupuncture works, and the best explanation I have at this point is that it helps them to reconnect with their vitality and inner resources that know how to do the healing. Well-placed needles do this really, really well, as you've no doubt noticed. In that interview portion of the work we do, those questions we ask to elicit what's wrong, sometimes we stumble across something that's right. I mean, really right, but our patients have failed to notice. In cases like this, directing their attention to this aspect of themselves can work a whole lot like a well-placed needle. The spirit and chi can inhabit the experience of their mind-body in a way that creates more possibility. It opens them up to resources from which they'd previously been closed off. Things change. My patient with the clear SIBO test, she was not happy about my seeing this as good news when I first said it to her. Sometimes patients would like for us to agree with them about their condition. And one of the great things about Chinese medicine is we have a different perspective. We have different stories, often stories with a whole lot more possibility. And if you can explain what you're seeing from the Chinese medicine side, but do it not in the language of Chinese medicine, but in the language that the patient already uses, then you can help them to see where there's other options. They might even celebrate having good news on a lab result. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AcuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit acufastneedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Amy Major, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you, Michael. It's a privilege to be here.
Oh man, the privilege is all mine. I am the lucky guy. I'm just like sitting here in the waiting room of Yongkang Chinese Medicine Clinic, aka Qiological International, which is where the recording happens here. And I get to talk to wonderful people all over the place.
Beautiful.
So I'm the lucky one.
I'd say.
Yeah. Microphone, internet connection.
There
off
you
you go. Yeah, exactly. So how long have you been doing this?
I've been nationally certified since 1988.
1988? They had
1988.
national certification in the Dark Ages?
They had national certification without a point location on bodies component. That was a part of California's exam, which I took in 1990, but it wasn't yet in the NCCA. There was no OM yet. And I took that when I moved to Massachusetts. I had to take it because it was then a part of the NCCA.
OM?
No, it wasn't OM yet then
still
either.
wasn't OM.
I took it in 1991. Then they dropped it. The NCCA OM dropped it, that portion that I had to take for Massachusetts.
What are you going to do?
Best you can, and give gratitude and say thank you for the privilege of getting to do this work and use this incredible medicine to help patients heal.
Yeah. You know what? Just before we started rolling tape, I heard you say that. Thank you and with gratitude. And I thought, I need to hear that more. And then I just heard you say it again. I got a feeling you say this a lot, don't you?
I say it a lot, and I focus a lot on being grateful for what's going on. My father, may his memory be a blessing, Oliver Shalom, as we say, used to say, if you're grateful for what you have and focus on what you have instead of what you do not, you will be happier.
It's true.
And to honor his memory, I live there.
Great. Well, we're going to get into talking about practice and all kinds of stuff, but let's see, you first started 1988. So 1980s.
1986, I started ACTCM in the first class in the country that had a Master of Science in Chinese Medicine.
Okay. You got involved in Chinese medicine because you wanted to have those nice oceanfront properties and expensive European cars, right?
I got involved in Chinese medicine because I was really sick and nothing else was helping. And I saw an incredible acupuncturist and it was helping. And I had spent a summer in Alaska and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I was in Alaska with all sorts of brochures. I did not want to take the GREs. I graduated with a 3.85 from Brandeis University. I was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. I was bright enough, but I did not want to take that type of test. And I wanted to go to Tibetan medical school. And at the time, you had to read Sanskrit, which I did not. And Chinese medical school was the next best thing. And at that time, now it's the standard, but at that time, ACTCM was the only one that demanded Western medicine as well. The only one that had a master's degree. If I was going to school for 4 more years, I wanted a master's degree.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And the only one that had pharmacology. And I figured that most of my patients would be taking medication, so I needed to know how to work with that.
So many of us, I think, have taken that path where we had some issues. Nothing helped. In fact, many things probably hurt. At least they didn't help. And then, yeah, Chinese medicine comes along and holy smokes, it's a different world. Things are different now. Yeah. So you probably had a number of practices during all these years. I mean, it's not like you just go into practice once and, oh, that's your practice forever. I mean, whatever gets us started, but things change over time, don't they?
They do change over time, but my patients have followed me. We've actually lived, I guess a semi-boring life, right? I married my husband, who we were friends for many years. He was at New York Chiropractic College. I was at ACTCM. We talked about opening a practice in Western Massachusetts, and we've been in Western Massachusetts since 1991.
Even though you've been in the same place and people keep going to you, would you say that the character of your practice has changed over time in the ways that you think about your practice?
Sure, because we are all evolving and growing and changing, and Chinese medicine is living. The way I frame it for patients is, I'm looking to bring you into the dynamic balance that generates life. Right? The generation cycle is moving. The cycles in Chinese medicine, whether it's the generation cycle or the over-controlling or the controlling cycle, things are in motion. And we want to keep the motion moving, si tong bu tong, in the direction towards openness, towards flow, towards health, right?
Mm-hmm. Si tong bu tong. You speak some Chinese?
A little bit.
一点点.
天天. Hi. 谢谢你.谢谢你. Thank you very much.
不会. It's fun. I love all those little phrases that are in Chinese. It's like just a couple of characters. Yeah. They matter. Mm-hmm. I mean, you first hear...
clear heat.
Right.
It depends on the school you went to. At ACTCM, they taught the treatment principles. They spoke them in Chinese. And the characters were on everything that we saw. We had to take medical Chinese for the program.
Back in the 80s, medical Chinese was part of the program.
You had to take a medical Chinese class before you matriculated.
Uh-huh. Before you even came in. Mm-hmm. You need a little bit of Chinese. Yep. And they actually spoke it in Chinese as well as English. Some of it. Yeah.
And this was at a time, Bensky was not published yet. So we had to take our notes of the herbs and we had to write the characters down. They wrote them on the board and we wrote them down as best we could because there was no Bensky.
That's how you learn language.
Right. Absolutely. But I speak several other languages, so it wasn't a big deal for me.
What do you speak?
I speak fluent German and a bunch of Spanish.
Uh-huh.
And I have a lot of Spanish-speaking patients, and it matters to them that I can speak to them in Spanish.
Yeah. I've got a couple of Spanish-speaking patients. One in particular comes in with a translator, and every time he does, I think, dang it, Michael Max, you really should learn a little bit of Spanish.
Es muy importante. It's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were first starting your practice, how did you get a practice going?
Well, I had a great privilege. I got to apprentice with Raven Lang, and I was very nervous about calling her outside of school. And Michael Schbach, who was in the class below me at ACTCM, was already apprenticing with her. And he gave her my number because I was chicken to call. And she finally called and she said, okay, what do you know about birth? What have you done? What have you read? What do you know? And what makes you think you're a good fit for me?
Cool.
So hot seat, hot seat, hot seat. And I was given the opportunity to apprentice with her. And her son said to me, okay, your job is to know what she needs before she needs it and have it set up in the room for her. If she has to ask you too many times, that's a problem. You need to know. You need to watch what she does. You need to learn her patterns and what's going on for the different patients. Now, she ran 6 rooms. So I learned a tremendous amount, but it wasn't the kind of learning where there was a decompression session where she taught. She said, you need to take notes and you need to do your job. So it was up to me to learn by watching.
That's a really Chinese style way of learning.
Right. And that's what I did. And I appreciate the privilege. I chased her for 20 hours a week for 3 years. And then I ran her apprentices. So it was a huge opportunity.
So in the process of chasing her, you got to learn in a very fundamental, nonverbal way. Here's how she works. Here's what she does. There's so much that can be transmitted without speaking.
100%. And a very curious thing is one of my dearest friends, Maggie Barilli, who's the chair of the Connecticut Acupuncture Society. She apprenticed with Raven many years later, right before Raven stopped practicing. And Raven had said she wanted to give me her practice and she wanted to stop practicing. And it was very clear that that wasn't going to happen and that she wasn't ready. So I moved back to Massachusetts to be closer to family. And my husband didn't get a California license, so we needed something for him to do as well. But when Maggie apprenticed with Raven, Raven went 1 room and practiced really differently. So what she learned was really different than what I learned.
Because Raven's practice had a different shape to it at different times.
Correct, as all of ours do, as they evolve. I have a private practice and I also run a women's community-style acupuncture clinic. The flavors of those are really different. People don't get less care, but they get less of my personal attention. But one thing that I've found is when a woman chooses a chair, there's someone that sits next to her that there's something that's kismet, something they learn from each other. And it brings me to tears sometimes, the beauty of these women being able to learn from each other. Like the woman with an autistic child sitting next to someone who is a toddler teacher and specializes in Reggio Emilia, inspired learning, which is independent learning and teaching children to be critical thinkers. So
how does stuff like that happen?
Because the God, Spirit, Universe, Source plans it. There's a saying in Yiddish, Man tracht und Gott lacht. We plan and God laughs.
It's so true.
Okay?
I never in my life planned to do medicine. I wanted nothing to do with it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. There it is, right? I'm not going to do this. And then God's like, yeah, right. Watch this.
You never know.
You do never know. But I'm pretty sure about this at this point. If you say, I am never gonna, and then XYZ, whatever it is, but if you preface it with, I'm not going to, the universe does not hear the negation. It only hears, I'm going to.
Well, that's why when children are running, we don't say don't run. We say walking feet, because they don't hear the don't. They hear run.
Yeah, you can't hear the don't.
Right.
Yeah. It's a curious thing. So Raven's practice changed over time. Yours has been changing. You've got a practice where you spend more time with people. You've got the community clinic. I'm curious about this community clinic. You say it's a women's health community clinic.
Mm-hmm. Women's only. When I was in acupuncture school, I was doing some political work. I was date raped. I got pregnant. It was really scary. The community, it was the American Indian community, and the men were like, yeah, he's a bro. So I was on my own on the other side of the country. My mother flew out to help me do what I needed to do, which was to not be pregnant, because I was starting a 4-year program and I did not want to have attachment to someone who had raped me and someone who was violent towards me. That was my first quarter of acupuncture school. So suck it up, buttercup, get your job done, take care of business, and GSD, get stuff done, do what you need to do to move forward. All of that happened, and that's what I did. And because you have to keep your eyes on the prize in acupuncture school, it's a long haul. My study group studied 6 hours a week for 3 years for the California boards, right? There were none of these study guides. They didn't exist then. We studied with Robert Johns to do a point location for the particular point locations on bodies component, which I don't know if they still do in California. But they had the point location on bodies component, and he taught us how to look for shadows and light and find certain points, the down and dirty ways to do that so we could pass that component of the exam. Eyes on the prize. What do you need to do to get it done?
Yeah. And so in part because of that experience, you've created this wonderful
Women's
place
only. 100%.
for women to go to. Yeah.
Right. And I have a little radio show called Healing Outside the Box, Inside the Heart on WHMP in Western Massachusetts. And we always have a team that runs and walks in the Hot Chocolate Run, which raises money for domestic violence, for victims of domestic violence, for women and families who are escaping domestic violence. And because, the Me Too movement it's not just now, it's been going on a long time, that women have experienced inappropriate, unwanted physical sexual contact. And there are plenty of community acupuncture clinics in my region. I wanted women's only, and I wanted to be able to offer the expertise of someone who has advanced training in women's health to be able to work with women-identified patients. I work with trans patients, right? Women-identified patients in a really safe space. And that's the space that I hold. So that's what I do.
And so within that space, I can see, given the frame that you've set for this, the space that you've created for this, that you could very easily have two women come in, sit next to each other, and have so much to share with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so much of the healing then, not just through the needles and through what you're doing, but through the space that you've created.
The collective consciousness, absolutely. And it's incredible what happens in that space.
I love hearing this. I spent a little time in Taiwan. I would not say Taiwan has a community clinic. And I didn't really spend time in acupuncture clinics here, but I spent time in herbal clinic in particular. I had a teacher that I met. But it also had this really incredible community base to it. And the community base was, there's no doctor's appointments in Taiwan. You walk in, you guahao, you get a number, and then you sit, and there's usually a TV with some, stupid show on. But what was wonderful is people would sit in the waiting room. And unlike here in America, where they're like, no one looks at each other and they're, going to keep their lips quiet until they, go into the treatment room where you confess your, medical sins or whatever. People there would gossip with each other. What are you here for? What do you think? What herbs did he give you? What's going on? I mean, there was all kinds of conversation. It was a very public, shared experience. And just the way people connected with each other in the waiting room. From my point of view, it was part of where the healing came from.
Absolutely. So one thing I found out actually this year, I write people notes on these little 3x5 cards that have my logo and my phone number so they can contact me and they know where it came from. And one of my patients came in and she said, oh my gosh, I was at the pool and I met so-and-so and I was going through my bag and she saw my blue cards and she said, you have blue cards from Amy? I have blue cards from Amy. What do yours say? This is what mine say. And I didn't realize that people hang on to them like talisman to hold them to their next appointment and to hold the space that we created together as part of their healing. So we never know how something we say, something we do, something we give a patient is going to impact their lives and what the ripples in the pond are going to be and how far they're going to reach.
Tell us about the blue cards.
Sure. It is a card. I think Hemingway used to do this. And it's a blue card with my logo and with my address and my phone number. The logo's in the back on a screen, 10%. So every time you give one out, right, you're advertising as well. But you're also letting people know how they can contact you and you're telling them you care and you're committed to providing them value. and that you're valuing their experience as your patient, right? And so I write their homework. And what I say is, this is your homework, should you choose to accept it. And people save them. And if someone forgets it, they text me, I forgot my little blue card. Will you take a photo? Will you send it to me? And of course I do that. I mean, I could email them, but that's not a tangible...
No, the card.
Right?
Yes.
The chi, the life force is very
Yes.
different.
Yes. I love hearing you say that. I do something a little bit similar. There's a printing company called Moo, M-O-O, moo.com. I love Moo.
I love Moo. I love their cards.
Yeah, because on one side you can have one thing and you can have like 100 different images on the other.
Yep. I'm going to go get one of the blue cards to show you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I want to see it. Yeah. So
sure.
Those of you here on the podcast, we actually can see each other because of the software I use. But maybe we'll get a picture of the card and put it on the website. Amy's going to go get it right now. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Lovely.
It has the website on the bottom, and it's 3x5. It's enough, and it's a blank back. So you could do anything with it.
So I don't have 3x5.
Uh-huh. Well, I have a little carrier from Levenger that they sell that you can put these in. So it makes it easy to have a bunch of them with you.
That is cool. I use the business card size. Mm-hmm. And on the back is my clinic address. Mm-hmm. And on the front is just an image.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And an image. And an image. And right?
They're beautiful. Yeah.
Well, I love the word that you use, talisman. You put something in their hands.
With love and with consciousness, right? We know from Candace Pert. I love Candace Pert, right?
All right. So some of our listeners may not know Candace Pert.
Okay. So Candace Pert wrote Molecules of Emotion. And it just so happened that Raven's partner at the time, Carol, there's a dedication in Candace Pert's book to her because she indexed Candace Pert's book, Molecules of Emotion. Now, in a nutshell, what is her book about? The science behind how every thought we have, every emotion we experience has a direct, measurable biochemical reaction in our bodies. And that's something that all of my patients hear because I share that with everybody because it matters.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary. Raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Yes. Well, and you know that thing that people say about, well, I feel better, but it might just be in my mind?
It's all in our mind.
It's all...
Then if someone says that, I would share with them the work of Vitaly Napadow, right? PhD licensed acupuncturist who does work in these mind-blowing studies on changes that are shown in fMRI that show up when you insert an acupuncture needle in. And his most recent studies that he presented at the SAR conference, the Society for Acupuncture Research, were about how when the acupuncturist cared about the patient felt it through the MRI, through the needle.
It would show up on the fMRI.
Right, and that makes a difference. It changes, our presence matters. Hugh McPherson has also done research about that shows how our presence matters, how we show up. So that means making sure we are doing self-care. We are nourishing ourselves. We are practicing what we preach. We are taking a moment and breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. So our brain's in alpha rhythms and we're relaxed and we're present. with our patients before we pick up a needle, because our chi affects their chi. We know this from the classics, and we know it from research, evidence-based research. Hugh McPherson, Vitaly Napadow, bada bing, bada boom. And for someone who wants more medical research, I refer them to the work of Helene Langevin, MD, licensed acupuncturist, chair of NCCIH, who's done work around how acupuncture affects fascia, which is great for anyone that has a lot of dry needlers in their area and they want to, science with science. Well, did you know that any research that's based on dry needling is actually based on acupuncture? And that's been shown through the Cochrane Review, because there aren't studies on dry needling. There aren't enough of them. So all of that research is based on the research that we do as licensed acupuncturists.
That is an angle that I had not thought about, that there's been more research done on acupuncture than on dry needling, which of course is acupuncture.
Yes, it's trigger point acupuncture. And the CMS CPT code committee, I was at this meeting. There were 2 acupuncturists and Maury West, who is AccuClaims, representing the American Society of Acupuncturists at the CMS CPT code meeting, where the dry needling code came up, but also the trigger point acupuncture code came up, and they're located in the same place. And it's because of Eric Raymond Buckley that we filed for the trigger point acupuncture code, and the CMS CPT code made them equivalent. So the argument that dry needling is not acupuncture is gone, according to the AMA, which owns the CMS CPT code group.
So let me make sure I've got this right.
Yep.
If you look at the CPT codes and that says this
starting January 2020, it will be published.
It'll be published.
Yeah.
So basically, our conventional medicine system, they use CPT codes to say that something is something. Here's a thing, and we used it to do another thing. We used it to do something. So the CPT code for dry needling and the CPT code for trigger point acupuncture is the same.
Yeah. Yep.
How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, I think it's way better that it plays out that way, because the way that dry needling, for the people that describe dry needling as being different than acupuncture, and we know it's a part of acupuncture, it's asha, trigger point needling. What is the difference in the technique? It's the insertion of a needle, the stimulation of a needle, and removal of the needle, right?
Sounds like acupuncture.
Well, yes, but it's not acupuncture with retained needles. To retain the needles, if you bill insurance, you have to use a different code.
Ah, got it.
When you retain needles, that's 97810, different code. That's acupuncture.
Right.
That's straight up, and the language is, that's acupuncture, right? And no e-stim. There's no code for putting e-stim on dry needling.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They cannot be reimbursed. And anyone that bills after January 2020, right, and doesn't use the dry needling code, because if there's a code, you got to use it. If they're doing dry needling and billing under any code other than that tiny little one, and because you can either use that code, acupuncturists can use that code, or we can use the timed codes. And my guess is, because it's the insertion of a needle, manipulation of a needle, removal of a needle, it's going to be valued as less.
We'll see. That's a really interesting development, huh?
Yes. And as you said, things change, things move forward. Things become. When I started practice, I became a birth educator and a birth assistant. 5 years later, I became a certified lactation counselor. 2 years ago, I became an end-of-life doula. So, we want to constantly be building our skills to provide value to our patients.
Well, absolutely. And, the other thing is, I can't imagine doing the same work I was doing 20 years ago.
Well, you're not the same person, so how could you?
Right. Well, exactly. I mean, there is that. But the idea that a practice is going to be, I just have this practice, it's going to be, roughly like this. It's like it's always changing.
Hopefully. Right? Again, we're back to that word dynamic, the dynamic balance that generates life. Something that's dynamic is in motion.
Listeners can't see that I get to see you as we're having this conversation. You're quite lit up. It's a delight. Everyone can hear this in your voice, though, just how lit up you are. So the good fortune that we have, that we get to develop ourselves, we get to develop our work, that we get to be like on this continually breaking edge, of our skills and knowledge and continually learning. On one hand, it's wonderful. On the other hand, many of us, including us acupuncturists, we don't like change. Or what happens when it gets uncomfortable and all of a sudden a whole lot of things that we thought we knew, we actually don't know. And we're back to that learning again. How do you navigate that stuff?
Well, I did my undergraduate work at Brandeis University and I had the privilege of studying with Maury Stein. He became my mentor. Now, he was not the Tuesdays with Maury. He was his best friend. The Tuesdays with Maury, and I kibitzed in the hall all the time while I was waiting for my Maury. And Maury Stein taught the sociology of birth and death. So I was 18 when I was reading Kellerman and Stephen Levine and Suzanne Arms on birth in the United States. And, all of these incredible people, and Number Our Days by Barbara Meyerhoff, and really thinking, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Sheila Kitzinger looking at birth and death. And that informs everything I do and how I do it. And one of the books we read was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And, I refer to one of my kids, we all have the people who are the Zen sticks in our life, the people that whack us to wake us up and pay attention. Right? And, Zen
Yes.
Mind, Beginner's Mind, what you said about coming circle, we come around. So we think about herbs one way. And then we do some more research and we grow and we get stuck in this one certain pattern. And then we get a Zen stick. And then we change how we do it. And hopefully we all have people on our own personal board of directors that help us be our best. Like Christine Cronin is one of those people for me. We have those people. Erin Raskin is one of those people for me. Because we have the people who help us be our best and push us and do not let us get away with being mediocre.
When you say you have a personal board of directors, so does that mean that you've got like good friends that hold you accountable, or do you actually have a group that you like lean on with intention?
It's a group that I lean on, but as individuals. Like, for example, something happened. I've been headhunted to be someplace. And you talk about change being hard. A midwife started a center for women for pregnancy, postpartum birthing. There were 2 midwifery groups, a home birth midwifery group, a hospital-based midwifery group. There was a female chiropractor, and they chose me. And I was actually the anchor renter. I was there the most. And there was a space with classes and other things. And she sold the business to someone. The woman decided, she was a home birth midwife. She decided to go back to midwifery school. And the person she sold it to turned out to be a narcissist and a sociopath and a liar. It was very difficult. And she gave me 30 days notice that I had to move out. Who gives someone 30 days notice if you want to support that practitioner to be active in the area? It was a time when I really felt like this is where I wanted to be. I loved this place. I built this place. They sold products. I sold products to pregnant women before and after hours so women could get nursing cream and nipple cream and whatever they needed and bags for their pump. The way that it happened was less than kind and less than ideal. And I called one of my dearest friends, Nicole, who I would say is on my personal board of directors.
On the board of directors.
And we found a place that was a stone's throw away from my building that I actually pay $50 less rent for more space. And I have 2 parking spaces in downtown Northampton, which is unheard of, for free. But I got a group of women from all over the country, and this is my personal board of directors. They don't know each other, but to help us name our business and help us come up with a name. And one of them did come up with the name, Wellness House Northampton, because my mind was blowing. I had 30 days to find a place, move my practice, deal with getting insurance up to date, all of these things up to date. It was rough. One of my kids, I was getting really upset at the person that did this, and he looked at me. He was 16 at the time, and he said, I have 6 kids. He said, 5 born at home. And he said, Mama, don't you know what Nelson Mandela said? I said, Akiva, Nelson Mandela said a lot of things to which you're particularly referring, right? And he says, Mama, getting mad at someone who has done you wrong is like you drinking poison and expecting it to kill them. You have to get over this. And I said, but. He said, no buts, Mama. I said, but. He said, no buts, Mama. He said, you have to deal with this and you have to move on. Okay,
Your
thank you, sir.
16-year-old.
16-year-old, yeah.
Teenagers are cool, aren't they?
He's very cool. He's now running the front office of a hedge fund. It's about embracing change. I don't know if you've ever read the book Who Moved My Cheese? One of
Oh
my
my
kids,
God.
right?
I mean, like
That's all about
in
this.
the 80s or something.
Okay, well, reread it. One
Okay.
of my kids has all sorts of sensory challenges, and there's a Who Moved My Cheese for kids. And that really helped him learn to be a more flexible person. My theme for my kids and for myself became resiliency. Our job is to be resilient. We can control nothing. This is evidence of this. We can control nothing. We can choose to be resilient. And my image for myself at that point was being in the eye of the storm with whatever change came.
Yeah. Well, and resiliency is only built by adversity.
Yes, I've had plenty of that.
Resiliency does not come out of a walk in the park. That's not resiliency.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, with the whole Me Too, with New York now changing its laws, I had to go through a whole piece about whether there was someone I was going to bring charges against from when I was a child and a teen. And, I spoke a lot about it with my husband, and I decided that I was not going to file charges because I don't want to live out of that. I want to live out of the gratitude that I feel now, and I want to move forward. And I don't want to relive that experience. Made me stronger.
Well, and to be able to sit where you are now and make this choice and go, do I want to continue to live in this?
Correct.
Yeah. So I just want to check something here. This clinic that you now have that has the lovely blue cards was birthed out of that experience of we've created this wonderful clinic and you have to be gone in 30 days. And now you've got what you've got.
Now I have 3 treatment rooms some days, 2 treatment rooms other days, but I talked one of my favorite painters, make relationships with painters because there are bad barters and good barters. We have bartered for all of the artwork in our space, and we have stunning artwork, right? From Donna Estabrooks is a semi-famous local painter, and Laura Radwell is a phenomenal painter, and Cindy Lutz Cornett. And I talked Donna into... I have an 8-panel screen that I talked her into painting on both sides. So I have these 2 murals. So I can put that in my waiting room. And I have 2 recliners in my waiting room, one that's electric, one that's not. So I can see 2 patients there too, for people who are open to it. Some people are, some people aren't. But
wow.
Yeah, it's all about what works,
What do you do in your free time?
I don't have a lot of free time because I'm the vice chair of the American Society of Acupuncturists. And that's a lot of the work that I do is paying it forward. And it's all because of Linda Robinson Heides, who's the former chair of the Acupuncture Society of Massachusetts, who said to me, okay, your kids are big enough. I know what you can do. We need a dry needling chair. This was in 2013. I said, what's dry needling? And she said, we need a chair, and I know you're going to get behind this. And then I got involved at the state level, and then I was pulled onto the national board. And then I was a part of the group that wrote the dry needling position statement from the American Society of Acupuncturists, and I nudged the NCCAOM until they wrote a statement. And it just, it's what you do. I don't do well with free time.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of creative energy, and you're looking for a place to do something.
Well, that, and, many of us have some form of chronic pain, and if I'm busy working on things that are of value, I don't focus on my own. I'm an autoimmune nightmare. I could focus on that, or I could focus on what can I do with the time I have. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I could die tomorrow. So what can I do with this day and leave it on the floor, right? Leave it on the mat. I have a 2nd-degree black belt in Okinawan karate. What do I want to do with this day to make a difference in the world and make it a better place? What can I do?
So these challenges, I'm using challenge here in air quotes, are like the fuel that gets you going. It doesn't sound like it's the stuff that holds you back. It's actually the stuff that propels you forward.
100%. My mother is the ever-ready battery. She is such a model. She's the chair of the wellness committee at the Osborne Retirement Home, where the average age is 92.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, she's 84. She
Oh,
can
young.
barely walk, but she does her thing and she brings in people to educate people. My parents, she was in the first class of patient advocates in the country. And
Really? And how did she fall into that?
I was weaned on healthcare as a right, not a privilege, which is why I accept any insurance acupuncture covers and and a legislator in Massachusetts said, if this bill passes to get insurance coverage for acupuncture in Massachusetts, it's because you've been driving it for so long. I don't know. My mom has always been a member of the Hemlock Society. She believes in euthanasia. She also believes that surgery is a solution to a lot of things, and surgery can be a viable and wonderful solution for some people, but she's had a number of failed surgeries. So I have had a life-saving surgery that was brilliant and wonderful and I'm grateful for, but I don't seek it out, unless there's no other choice. I don't know what drove her, but her business card had the character of crisis, risk over opportunity.
Right.
And that's what I hold.
What did your mom do for a living?
She was a patient advocate. She was one of the first patient advocates in hospitals in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, she did her undergraduate degree at Sarah Lawrence College and her graduate degree at Sarah Lawrence College. And my father was a manufacturer's representative for a furniture company who was quite brilliant and who had to go to work. He got through college in 2.5 years because his father died, his mother needed help, and he was committed to helping her.
So you get through, you do what you need to do.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
There is that suck it up, Buttercup, and there is that thing that you're talking about with resiliency as well. That these kinds of things, if we let ourselves in some ways come undone from whatever limits we have or stories we have or frustrations we have, and let that go from something that holds us back to something that actually propels us forward, it can be super helpful.
It can. And I have an aunt, my mother's only sister, went the opposite direction. And she was the saddest person I knew. And she shares a birthday with my mother and my fourth child. And it was like, again, man tracht und Gott lacht, we plan and God laughs. This precious, beautiful, brilliant boy, you have a number of children, when you're intimate with your spouse. He was conceived the night before my father had quintuple bypass surgery. And then this precious boy was born on my mother's birthday. My mother's sister, who was the saddest person I've ever met in my life, was also born on her birthday. Right before my son turned 1 and they all had their birthdays, she died. So it was like, oh, God didn't want my mother to spend her birthday alone? Who knows? But appears that way. And they're very close, this precious boy and my 84-year-old mother,
It's easy to look on the dim side of things. And in the world that we have today and the way that it is there's just like so much inflammation, not just in the human body, but it's like in our relationships. It just seems like there's so much inflammatory talk and posturing. To be able to step back from it, and here you are, you say you're an autoimmune mess. How do you step back from inflammation inside and outside?
Well, for me, I do the things I need to do. We have this ridiculous room that we're not sure. We think they were in this home that's next to the bathroom. We think they were expanding the bathroom. They decided not to. It's a very tiny little room. I have a Pilates chair in there and a vibration machine and free weights and a bar. And I exercise for 30 minutes every day, at least 5 days a week. I used to have a rower in there, but I tore a tendon, so I can't row anymore. So I moved it out because it was making me frustrated that I couldn't row. So I put something else in there because the time that I have to exercise is between, 6 and 6:30. And my children knew the only time, I did attachment parenting. I nursed extensively. I have 6 children. I nursed for 16 years. But from 6:30, if you are not bleeding, vomiting, or on fire, and you did not cause those things to happen, don't interrupt me and let me work out. Because this is what helps me save my life. I do that. I take my Chinese herbs. Thank you, Zev Rosenberg. I eat well, right? I cook all of our food. I make sure that I'm in bed at 10 o'clock. No, thank you. It's...
Let's see. You're in bed at 10 o'clock. You cook all your food. You've got more than a busy practice. as well as other committees that you're on, and you're still in bed by 10 o'clock?
Sometimes I'm in bed on a meeting, but I'm lying down and my feet are up. Feet are up, and no phone calls from anyone other than the favorite list on the people that need to reach me. God forbid my mother's in the hospital or something, or one of the kids needs something, or the ASA chair. Other than that, no. BED.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner, because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
You mentioned before we were rolling tape here that you spend much of your time at the clinic that you told us about, but you also spend some of your time working out of your house. I'd like to hear about that.
I have a home office, and I convert the front of my home to 2 treatment rooms every Thursday. And there are patients that love it and patients that aren't comfortable with it. So I just am really clear. It's a home office. If you want to be here, I'd love to see you here. And if you don't, I have room in Northampton. And there are some people that just love coming here. It's closer, it's more convenient. And some people like the ambiance better. So it's a big blessing to be able to see patients here. And also that way on Jewish holidays when I don't drive, I always have somebody who's got an embryo transfer on a Jewish holiday. And all of those people stay pregnant to term. So they come to the home office because I'm not going to be at work.
And you treat people on Jewish holidays?
Yeah, if they come to my house, sure.
If they come to your house.
Sure.
Yeah. What made you decide home office? Why not just another space?
I mean, it's so much money to put out, I mean, I did have another space, but I only had 1 room, and that's a waste for me because I need at least 2 rooms, I feel like. 2 rooms and space for people to walk with Dr. Drew's scalp acupuncture in the back of their head to open up their sacrum. So I rented from somebody, and there were some strange things that happened, and then she lost the space, and it kind of felt like she must have been laundering money because she never had people, and it was really expensive to be there for her, much more than me, because she had 4 rooms that were empty all the time.
Something wasn't adding up there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then after that, and we'd rented somewhere else in Springfield that was a fortune, and I didn't feel safe there. And so why not have to pay rent somewhere?
Well, I can tell you about 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to buy a house where I could work out of the bottom of it. And really up until that point, I never thought I would work out of my home because I thought it was unprofessional. Oh, working out of your home, that's unprofessional. I mean, when I first got out of acupuncture school, I knew people that were like, oh yeah, I'm going to work out of my home. And I was like, ew, why would you do that? Well, the reason was I didn't feel like I was competent enough in what I was doing. I needed the trappings of an office, and it looked medical and blah, 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 blah. And a few years ago, I realized, oh my God, if I'm not professional by now, I never will be. I think I'm there. I don't think I need a space to make me look professional. I think I can do this anywhere. And I got to tell you, ideally, pocket full of needles, there's wandering monks that walk around with needles. That's what they do. But yeah, being able to have a space that is, for me, not medical, has become really important. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are very interested in the integrative model. They really want to like focus on the medical side of what our medicine is, and that's perfectly fine. I really like having a place where people can step away from that world if they'd like to step away from it.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing. And also, even in my office, they step away from that world. Like, I mean, the love and compassion and the vibrational changes that happen in the space because of the work that we do changes that. One of my patients is an OB, and I do a lot of work with patients of OBs and REs, reproductive endocrinologists, and midwives, whether they're home birth midwives, hospital midwives. And I said to her, gee, I wish I'd gone to medical school. And she said, please don't wish that. We need you doing what you do because you're really good at it, and we need you. And I felt very honored and privileged by her saying that to me. And we can be part of the team without having to do what they do. We can use the information that we gather from them, from the tests and from the labs and from the images, and that's terrific.
It's great stuff.
We
Super
get to
helpful.
do what we do.
Yes. So often medicine it's a team sport.
Absolutely. At its best, it is a team sport. Look at the Cleveland Clinic, the tremendous work that's going on there with MDs, licensed acupuncturists, chiropractors. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is. I haven't brought up the B word, but I do want to bring it up. Business. Because a lot of acupuncturists, we hear the word business and we're like, oh yeah, I'm not a business person. I'm an acupuncturist. Leave me out of the business piece if at all possible. But it seems to me that if you're going to have a practice and you're going to be self-employed, having a business is part of what your practice is. I'd love to get your thoughts on doing business, as my grandpa used to say. Doing business.
All right. My father he was a manufacturer's representative for a furniture company. So he was self-employed, right? He worked from home. He worked from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and I had jobs to do. I had to file his invoices. So my work ethic comes a lot from him, from knowing that.
Your dad basically had a business.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, manufacturer's rep is you're basically self-employed. So you grew up with someone who didn't have a job. He had a business.
Correct. And my father, he was just constantly humping it. And my father wrote 150 letters to my kids that I can find. There's more, I'm sure. But each letter is like a life lesson. And he tells them, his things. Routinization and organization are the keys to success. Choose to be grateful for what you have. Have a tickle file where you put things in that you have to follow up on. Know people's names. My father tells this great story. This other manufacturer's rep comes up to him one day and he starts complimenting his tie and this and that. And my father looks at him and he says, so, Sid, when did you read Dale Carnegie's book or take his workshop? And he says, what? How do you know I read that book or took that workshop? He said, Sid, I've known you for 40 years and you've never complimented me on anything. And you came up to me and you complimented me on my tie. Come on. So, he was very aware and very astute and very incisive. And he sat us down and had us do a budget for college. He supported us for undergraduate and we had to take care of graduate school. But he taught us about budgeting when we were young. I was allowed to go to summer camp. You want to do horseback riding? That's extra money. What's your proposal for how you're going to work that off for me to pay that?
That's great. Right? What wonderful lessons to get as a kid to recognize there's this resource called money. There's a resource called time. And how do you make all of that dance with your desires?
I was 14 and my first job was shoveling dog poop for 2 prize Great Pyrenees dogs and cleaning their runs. And then the guy added giving vitamins to a pregnant Great Pyrenees, and they're the drooliest dogs in the world, and you had to get your arm halfway down their throat. And I was like, I need more money for this. So I negotiated a raise with this guy who had tons of money but didn't want to give me any of it. I always had jobs, paying attention and looking at how we can provide value. Like I really love Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver. And Christine Cronin, who teaches at PCOM and is on my personal board of directors and also serves on the ASA board of directors, she's teaching that as part of interprofessional communication now, because we need to learn how to communicate, because part of business is how do we communicate with MDs, right? To know, to talk with them and find out what they do and say so, and ask them questions that elicit who are their appropriate patients they might refer to you and why they might refer them.
And maybe find out what are the problems that they're having that we might be able to help them solve.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with dropping off cookies and brochures and a note, asking if they'd want to do a lunch and learn. We have to build bridges. It's not just about writing letters and making cold calls. That doesn't necessarily work because we are our business, right? And if it's about consciousness and if it's about sharing chi and transferring chi, then we have to be doing the doing, right? Some people say, and I see this on Facebook all the time, oh, don't answer your own phone. You need to have a person answering your phone. That might work for some people. When I call the doctor, I really love talking to my doctor or my midwife, right? My patients love it that I answer my own phone, and I do.
Well, so many patients that I have, including my mother, who when she's trying to talk to her doctor, well, you can't talk to the doctor. Well, you never talk to the doctor. What does it say when they have a chance to talk to us?
How great. They're so grateful. So grateful. People are shocked that I answer my own phone. And it makes a huge difference. And at every touch point and in every relationship, are we building a relationship with that person or that MD or that midwife or that oncologist, right? And how can we follow up? Are we following up when we meet someone at a party? Are we sending them a personalized note? Don't print it, handwrite it in blue ink so it's clear that you're handwriting it. Right? There's a reason a lot of people have their photo on their business card or on one of those fabulous cards that you've made, right, with notes, because you can use that as a tiny thank you note. That's a brilliant idea. And I think I'm going to learn from you with that.
Well, I just think anytime you can slip something into someone's hand, not to promote yourself, but to give them some kind of value and some kind of help, then it has meaning. Well, it has value. I've heard it said, especially when you're building your practice, give your card to everybody. I never give my card to anybody unless they ask.
Well, I talk to people and then people often ask. And one of the things, and it's a very curious thing, I was at the Integrative Fertility Symposium a number of years ago, and someone who taught a practice building seminar said, oh, do you have a card? And I said, yes. And I gave it to him. He said, do you know you're one of 3 acupuncturists who's given me their card when I asked for it? And I've been approached by 100 people. Carry your card with you all the time. Keep a couple in your wallet, because when someone asks you for it, then you want to have it to be able to give it to them.
Straight up. Absolutely. I always carry them, but I never hand them out unless there's already been some kind of connection that's happened. Otherwise, it just doesn't have meaning.
Mm-hmm. Well, and right. And you paid for those cards and you want it to have meaning, but you also want to provide value to the people and, the shared experience of chi, of life, of consciousness.
Do you have any advice for people that are starting out, or maybe they've hit a spot in their practice where it's a little bit rough?
I would say, think about what your ideal patient is. Who's your ideal patient? Write it down. Put it in a place where you're going to see it. Put it on your fridge. If you have an altar, put it on your altar, like where you light candles, or in a place that matters to you. And focus on it. Meditate on it. And go on the internet and look at doctors or other allied health professionals who you feel like, look at their websites. Do you align with them? Approach them. Make little baskets. Bring them cookies. They can be health foods or some, whether it's cookies or a foot soak or Chinese herbs to cook with chicken soup, right? Pay it forward in a meaningful way that makes connections, as you said, because it's about making connections and touching that heart space that makes a difference, and doing demo treatments when you can.
Tell us about that.
Well, so I've had the privilege of doing them at the State House in Massachusetts several times, I've done it twice at the Capitol in DC, and for the American Society of Acupuncturists conference, the day after, we had 250 acupuncturists lobby on Capitol Hill, and I was responsible for 20 acupuncturists who were providing demonstrations to legislators and staff on Capitol Hill. And people walked in stressed and they left, at ease. And that makes a difference. Once someone has experienced this, then they are changed. If you're not comfortable doing acupuncture ear demos, use ear seeds. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't have them here, I don't think, but I have a little card with an ear on it too, so I can hand mark for people a couple of spots to put on them, because I don't like to give people too much information because it overwhelms them. But one or two things people can handle.
Right. Well, then it has value.
Yes, I make rack cards for people at my website, wellnesshousenorthampton.com, under forms and downloads. There's one for women who are newly pregnant called I'm Pregnant, Nauseous, and Tired. Help! Which came out of a friend of mine being pregnant. And
nauseous and tired.
She was nauseous, she was exhausted, and she was crying because she was pregnant. But 3 weeks before, she was crying because she wasn't pregnant, and she really wanted to be pregnant. So right after I'm Pregnant, Nauseous, and Tired, help, I wrote, remember, you wanted this. And then there are simple things people can do, like soak their feet in hot water, use ginger or mint, and things that I've learned throughout the years as a birth educator and birth assistant that can help people. I also have a different card for keeping babies positioned. Another one, I wrote an article with my writing partner, Christine Cronin, about using a hairdryer as heat therapy when you can't have access to a Moxastick.
Oh, God, I love it. That's hilarious.
Right? That's at the PCOM newsletter, but also under forms and downloads on my website. There's a piece about how to use a hairdryer in lieu of a Moxastick.
So you've got all kinds of educational materials that you share with people.
That are free. And I give them to midwives to put in their packets. And I have one on acupressure for birth. And I got permission from Deborah Betts to use her images in that card. And I have her site listed as well on that. Because people, they don't want 26 things, but give them 3 or 5. I have one on empowering things you can do to get ready for birth. And the first thing is watch funny movies that might make you laugh so hard you might pee. Because when we relax this, our mouth, right, the os, we relax our other os, the os of the cervix, the mouth of the cervix. So it's about what's real and what's concrete that people can do. And as you said, provide value, right? What can we give them to teach them something that they can use that's tangible?
Right. Well, and there's so much, air quotes here, information out on the internet, it very quickly becomes noise. And so to be able to take something, package it in a way or just distill it into something that they can take with them, it's just one or two things. One or two things is usually doable.
And a lot of these things are things that our grandmothers did and taught us. Epsom salt baths. Hi, Nanny. My grandmother taught me that. She never went to college, but she was really smart. Those are the things. What are simple things people can do at home that don't challenge them too much, right? A castor oil pack is great, and many of my patients are taught how to do that. And for other people, they need the castor oil roll-on, a warm washcloth, and a hot water bottle over that because that's what they can manage. And we need to remember that there's a big difference between ideal and good enough. And I aim for good enough.
I think good enough is way underestimated. I mean, you might see this with your patients too. Maybe they've been working on their diet and they go, well, I was doing fine. And then, I had a day where I was bad. They always say that. I was bad. And I'm like, bad? What do you mean bad? Well, I ate, da, da, da. It's like one day out of how many? 1 day out of 4.
Well, and I would reframe the bad. Oh, you mean you ate something you wanted to eat? That's okay. You can go back to changing it. And one of my kids lost 40 pounds at fat camp. He really wanted to go to fat camp. He was really damaged at his school and he gained a lot of weight. His self-esteem was in the toilet. And he said, Mommy, I want to go to fat camp. So every cent we had, I called the guy and he was amazing. He said, we're a weight loss camp. We're not a fat camp. We promote self-esteem. We teach them about nutrition, but we are not a fat camp. And he said, your son really needs to be here for 9 weeks. I said, according to your website, I can send him for 4 weeks. He said, you can send him for 4 weeks? I said, yes. He said, we'll cover the other weeks. They covered him. He got to go for 9 weeks. He lost 40 pounds. He lost another 10. Most people do not do that, but he's paying attention to all of these things and he's aware of portion control. And he's like, Mommy, you know, they told us you have to treat yourself every day, but be aware of what you're treating yourself with. So that means not a hot fudge sundae, but a couple of tablespoons of ice cream.
That reframe is so powerful. It's okay to treat yourself. The question is, what are you treating yourself with? And are you aware that you're treating yourself?
It's imperative to treat yourself.
It's imperative to treat yourself.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I have a friend who was post-dates and she was sobbing. The same friend that inspired that card. And she was sobbing because she was post-dates. And she's like, oh, I thought it was okay with this and I'm not. And I said, okay, I'm going to come pick you up. She's like, no, I don't want acupuncture. I said, no, I'm not going to give you treatment. We're going to get a pedicure. And she's like, what? I've never had one of those. And so I took her to get a pedicure. And they massaged her legs and she was soaking her feet in hot water. And she was like, and she picked out a color to paint her toes. And she had never done this for herself. And I gifted her with this. And you know what? The next day she gave birth. We need to shift the energy sometimes.
I can just hear the mental processes of people listening to this podcast right now that are working with pregnant women who are a little bit post-date. And it's like, you know what? Instead of acupuncture today, I want you to take that money and just go get yourself a pedicure. And that's the treatment.
And then go home, put on something sexy. I understand you might not feel sexy. Find a robe, find a sash, find a something, and get busy with your husband and tell him to put it in the never turn down a perfectly good orgasm department. And tell him he needs to take one for the team. And he's not going to be getting any soon, so he might as well enjoy it now.
All right. Well, all right, folks, there you have it. A fantastic protocol for bringing on labor.
Absolutely.
You should write a book.
I'm working on it. I actually went to the Harvard Medical Writers Conference, and in November, I'm circling back with a literary agent. Thank you for your kind words.
Oh, I can hardly wait to read it. All right. So when the book is ready to go to press, we'll have you back for part 2 and to talk about the book. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much for the
Wonderful.
opportunity.
Amy, anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we wind this down for today?
The best advice I can give anyone about their practice is to be your authentic self, which is going to be different than my authentic self, you know? And trying to be like your mentor. I'm not Raven. And I'm not Dr. Gatki Lai. And I'm not Dr. Chung. But I learned from Dr. Chung, who said, know your treatment principle grid. Know your treatment grid. Know what something does and put it in your grid. And that's why I wrote that article about using a hairdryer as a moxa stick. These are the things we need to be sharing with each other and teaching our patients. What's your authentic self? What's true for you? It's going to be different than what's true for me, right? I tried magnets. I lost them. I bought $400 worth of magnets after a magnet workshop with Dionysus Scoliotis. They disappeared.
Not for you.
That's not my tool. Okay, God, I got that one. But I do use the tools, birth, postpartum, nursing. That's my gig. I got it. Chronic
Wonderful.
pain and end-of-life care.
Yeah. Deeply personal items for you.
Yeah, so find where you shine and be authentic with yourself and what moves you and what brings out the best in you. That's the best advice anyone can give. And follow through.
It's great advice. A little terrifying to actually be ourselves in public.
Always. Read some Brené Brown if you're confused. And Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Ooh, I just got Malcolm's new book too.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah,
My
I'm the
Shabbat
same
reading.
way. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Amy.
Be well. Thank you so much.
Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.